How do you get your team on the same page? What mistakes do first-time practice owners make? I'm here with my awesome friend, sponsor, Kara Kelly, and we're going to talk about all the things they did not teach us in dental school because there were no HR classes. Kara's an amazing sponsor and supporter. Kara, just give our audience a snapshot of kind of what you do every day to help dentists increase success, decrease stress, and most of all, reduce crying inside.
Thanks, Paul. I love helping dentists reduce crying inside. And I've been doing this since about 2012. And I've been a proud Nacho sponsor and key resource for several years, I think, at
Yeah.
this point. And one of my most favorite things to do is really to help practices get their team on the same page. We do this in a lot of ways. Having a really solid employee handbook is probably one of the number one ways, but then also just in general, being able to communicate those expectations to our team. And so I do help practices with their compliance and I help them with, getting all the policies developed and things like that. But I really, really like to help practices with their employee relations and building a stronger team, building a practice worth working for.
I love that because when you have good communication, you can build a team like the Philadelphia Eagles and destroy the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl with such dominance that they had to put their backups in during the game. So let's start with a little fun thing for
Go
first-time practice
Birds!
owners. Yeah, go Birds. Fun things for first-time practice owners. Keep this F. You offer a special program. You offer a special Nacho discount. If you're a first-time practice owner, is like, I want to get this right. I want to assess my team. I want us to have the right tools. How can you help them get on the same page?
So for first-time practice owners, whether it's an acquisition or a startup, or I've seen a couple lately where I call it buying a startup, where they bought the practice and it's built out, but the team doesn't actually come with it and they have to hire everybody. Um, for first-time practice owners, I typically will add a lot more into what my standard employee handbook engagement is. I will help them with job descriptions. I will help them get their offer letters put together. I will give them some resources, all for the same price that I would do an employee handbook for. And I mean, if this is a practice that's been established for a while and they just really can't get it figured out, I'm happy to extend that offer as well. But it really does primarily serve the newer practice leaders, the ones who are starting or buying a practice for the first time.
Well, I always share, and I'll use dentist words against them. If you want to make sure you spend less money and less time in the dentist, make sure you go to your hygiene visits, make sure you stay on top of things, because that whole ounce of prevention worth the pound of the cure does work out for your sanity and your success. You can text HR to 215-543-6454 to learn more about how the awesome Kara can help you. But now let's move over to frustrations for a second, Kara. You're a first-time practice owner. You're balancing so many things. One of the things I think people should give first-time practice owner grace for is the patients are all new to you, the team's all new to you, but you must remember that managing expectations, job descriptions. Tell us some mistakes these first-time practice owners have made and how they can avoid them.
So a lot of it comes down to not knowing what they don't know.
Yeah.
They have all of this compliance burden. They have all of these practice management consultants and all of this advice that they get. And one of the pieces of advice that I feel is a little bit antiquated when it comes to the HR side is that you should wait 6 months before you change anything if it's an acquisition, or that you don't want to do too much too fast if it's a startup. And when it comes to compliance, you kind of have to. I understand if it's an
Right, yeah.
acquisition, you don't want to walk in on day one with a 60-page employee handbook, but there may be some things you need to do, like having your team clock in when they might have not been doing that prior, or having them paid a certain way when the seller might have done something differently. And so all of those are things that I all too often get the call, hey, it's Friday afternoon. I just bought a practice yesterday and I'm going to meet the team on Monday. I need help. I'm like, yes, you do. Let's see what we
Yeah,
can get done in the fastest amount of time
yeah.
possible. But some of that's going to have to happen afterward because we are not getting an employee handbook done this weekend.
Yeah. And I think what you're sharing is so valuable. The team is such a vital part of your success. And if you've been in a parent situation, I've had my daughter say, "But mom said I could do this." And I say, "Fine. Let's wait till she gets home in 2 hours and see." But when you sell a practice, that seller may be in across the country. That seller may be gone. So the team, and I'm not saying that they're misleading you, they may say, "Oh, but we don't have to do that here." Old Doc Seller said we don't have to do that. Whether it's accurate or not, you're still now have to are forced to deal with it. So I like your advice here. So getting out ahead of it means what to you, Kara? Whether it's employee manual, documentation, tell our first time practice owners how they can get out ahead of this frustration or mistake.
Well, some of it's actually forecasting at the state level, state and possibly even city level. The seller might have said, we don't have to, I've had this happen in the last couple of years, we don't have to pay PTO to our part-time employees. It's super, super easy. We're only open 3 days a week, and so you don't have to give them any benefits. We don't even have PTO because they all work like 24 hours a week, except that their state had just enacted a sick leave law. And
Yeah.
so the seller didn't know or didn't share, and the buyer bought the practice thinking that they didn't have to offer a certain benefit, and it turns out that they did, even for their part-time employees. So failing to actually look ahead and kind of forecast what is it the state's really doing, or city in certain states, you may have a state that doesn't have the ordinance, but the city or county does. And so working with somebody who actually understands that those are things we need to go look for is really going to help you get ahead of that curve and know what you're getting into. I actually had one this last year who purchased a practice in Chicago, and then Chicago, with the state Paid Leave for All Workers Act in Illinois, did something that was additive instead of transformative. They didn't just adapt to what PLAWA said, they added it, and now the Chicago practices are having to do 80 hours of paid
Yeah.
leave in 2 different types of leave with a bunch of different compliance. And she was so not prepared for that. And I mean, how could you be? She had just bought the practice before it happened. So
Keeping
it's
up
one
with
of
it
those
is
things you
nacho
definitely want to
nuts.
look at.
I love what you're sharing here. People can text HR to 215-543-6454 to learn about your awesomeness. There's this joke, it's not my joke, Kara, where says the worst time to look for a plunger is when you need a plunger. And I think the worst time to be contacting an HR specialist for the first time is when you have a crisis. I want to share that I didn't know this as a young practice owner. HR people are not there to cause you problems. They're there to avoid problems and be proactive instead of reactive. I have a feeling, Kara, that you talk to dentists who say this: I wish I did this sooner. I wouldn't be in this situation. Does that happen?
Yes, yes, it does. And not just for the compliance side of things. I have a practice leader I'm working with right now that we are working on her employee handbook. She's owned the practice for about 3 or 4 months at this point, and she had something come up with one of her team members where they weren't coming back from lunch on time. They weren't coming back whenever she needed them to. And so I coached her through the conversation that she should have with this person. And she comes back the following week at our next meeting, and she's like, oh my gosh, it's like I have this new power
That's
because
great.
she's able to ask for something that she wants and it
Yeah.
got done. Now, it may not be a permanent all fix and she may have to continue the conversation, but I love how empowered she felt just being coached through that one conversation for a small issue. And she just didn't realize that it was much bigger in her head than it really was in reality.
I love it, Carol. You share so much with us. You support us. Thank you for being a sponsor. People can reach out to dentalnachos.com to connect with you or text HR to 215-543-6454. You will make sure that you are creating your dream team and not your scream team for the dental office. Thanks so much, Kara.